And now it's a joy to welcome Deacon Mitzie Schafer. Deacon Mitzie is called by the South Carolina Synod Council as a full-time consultant with Grundland, Sather, and Brunkow. I've been practicing. This is a fundraising organization that helps nonprofits and churches tell their story in ways that increase engagement. Mitzi is a certified fundraising executive specializing in strategic planning, annual fund, planned giving, and in CAGA, a model of storytelling, training, and coaching. She will serve as our Assembly keynote speaker, and it's a delight to welcome you right here to your own synod and to the stage with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. And thank you, Pastor Mary. I was just sitting there thinking about how you've been a Miss Tizzy for me. And for a lot of us, I would imagine. Greetings, friends of the South Carolina Synod. It is really good to be back together again. I have missed you. It's what Ted Goins calls Old Home Week, and I firmly believe that. It's nice to be back together. Before we get started, I have a confession for you. I personally don't sit still very well. And I recognize that you will be sitting still a long time during assembly. So I want to make you 3 promises for my time with you. It is my hope and the hope of your Synod staff that you feel empowered, equipped, and energized to tell your own faith stories as individuals and as congregations when our time together is complete. To do this, I'm making you 3 promises. First, I will say what I mean, and I will mean what I say. It may feel like I step on some toes, but I promise to speak the truth in love. Second, my goal is to give you actionable and relevant information that you can use with at least one clear takeaway with every session together. And finally, my favorite, you will not be asked to turn to your neighbor. Yeah, okay, thanks. It makes me feel weird, and I'm not gonna ask you to do something that I don't want to do myself, okay? So now that our expectations are established, I'd like to tell you a story. 20 plus years ago, my husband Jason and I sat on the floor of Eford Hall at Lutheridge for summer staff orientation with Pastors Mary and Pastor Tim Kenneth Kuhn, the program directors. You've already met Pastor Mary telling you Miss Tizzy, one of my personal favorites. Jason had been on staff the summer before, but I had only set foot on campus for the first time 2 days prior. I was still a Methodist. Orientation involved 2 full weeks of training on all sorts of topics like leading cabin times, finding your way around campus, acronyms like GD, how to complete an evaluation, and to all my fellow previous camp counselors, risk management. It also included what it means to be camper first and how to live that out. To be camper first, we were taught to treat campers like debit cards, not credit cards. Back then, debit cards were a new thing, and we didn't all just have them in our pockets as college students. We know now that with debit cards, you must first make a deposit into the account before you can make a withdrawal. And with a credit card, you can spend and spend and spend, but eventually you have to pay that back with interest to be right with the bank. Being camper first meant making significant and meaningful deposits into the lives of campers before expecting a withdrawal. A withdrawal, we learned, was an expectation of behavior. I really need you to wear closed-toed shoes. I really need you to brush your teeth. I really need you to get up these 67 steps of cardiac so we can get to breakfast on time. I really need you to be kind to your fellow campers. We learned that getting the desired behavior out of a camper was much easier if we made relationship deposits first. A deposit, we learned, was an expectation of ourselves to treat the camper with care and respect, like remembering their name, asking them about their favorite things, helping them tie their shoe, reading them a bedtime story, playing a game, listening, and sitting with them in the craft lodge while they try to string all those little beads onto that thread, and then helping them pick them up when they all fall all over the floor. Miss Tizzy was very good at deposits. After a number of summers on staff and then seminary, I found myself in the nonprofit world, and I found myself as a parent of my own children. Turns out, being camper first translates really well into being my own kid first, client first, staff first, donor first, and really, friends, neighbor first. It feels like that would be a given in the church, but I do a lot of editing and reviewing of church content. And I find that on average, 80% of our church communication is withdrawal language. So, serious question. You don't have to raise your hand and you don't have to turn to your neighbor, but think about this with me. Do you worry about the number of the people in your pews? Do you worry about getting volunteers? About your church's finances? Do you feel like the excitement and the energy in your church is waning? Congregations around the country share these all too often common themes. I hear it every day. This scarcity or obligation mindset translates into withdrawal language in our communications as congregations and as individuals inside congregations. Withdrawal language, once it starts, creates this downward spiral. Withdrawal language in a congregation sounds like, we don't have enough of. We're running out of, if only they would. People don't anymore. Or printing the budget numbers in the weekly bulletin or monthly newsletter. In addition to the withdrawal messages coming from our individual congregations, we also have withdrawals from larger church bodies and institutions these days. Lack of transparency and loss of trust has become a more corporate withdrawal for denomination after denomination, and we, friends, are not immune to that because the church is human and it also has social media. Withdrawals are always noisier than deposits. While withdrawal language comes from a place of fear and scarcity, a mindset of believing deep down that people are morally obligated to give or volunteer or forgive, it also comes from a place of lost relevance. I started teaching congregations how to interview for and write their church's impact story, really to help them raise more money. And what I learned very quickly is that the practice of listening to their neighbor was actually connecting them back to their own relevance as a community of faith, something they had lost and forgotten how to do. God made the greatest deposit. We live inside the story of that great deposit every single day. But that is not what we hear the most of. And if this is so, then the greatest deposit we can make in the life of a congregation or a denomination is to help people see the relevance, or rather the impact that God is having through them on the lives of others, and how God is having that same impact on them because of their community of faith. When a church makes a withdrawal, it doesn't mean that God is not making deposits. It simply means that we are focusing on the withdrawal of humans, not the deposits of God. As an example, last week, one of my congregations completed their storytelling training, and this story was a result. Stacy is a compassionate, funny, and thoughtful human and mother. She and her family were active members in a congregation where she and her husband were married and her children were baptized. Despite being what she calls overly active in the church, Stacy found herself continually pouring from an empty cup. She found some support in the congregation's pastor, but lacked the holistic support that she needed from the congregation. We felt like unpaid staff, she said. She also said she felt really alone. Stacy sat each week in the nursery with her very active toddler and missed worship because there was no one else who would take a turn. And some folks in the congregation had made it clear that her toddler was too noisy for worship. Back in Stacy's neighborhood of Springs Park, her family was building connections at First Lutheran Church. Bridget, their daughter, was participating in vacation Bible school with a friend who had invited her, and Brian, her husband, had started taking their son Nathan to these baby music classes at first. Then one of their friends invited them to worship. The welcome and support Stacy's family received through the community at first was an aha moment for Stacy. She found a place to give of herself while also receiving abundant love and support. Time and time again, Stacy's family has had things to mourn, including significant mental health crises. And the community of First has continually stepped up to mourn with her, walk with her, and buoy her up. She said she wanted to be a part of a community of friends. And what she got at First was not only friends, but a net under her family. We have people who are willing to listen to us, she said, even when it feels like they should not want to listen to us anymore. Their love is deep enough that our family can't wear it out, just like God's love is deep enough that we can't wear it out. Stacy's previous congregation had made so many withdrawals that she said it herself. She was pouring from an empty cup. I wondered how Stacy's previous church framed her story of leaving. She sought out a place that made deposits, a place that didn't see her as unpaid staff, but rather one that walked alongside her in times of crisis. This story shows the relevance of the church community. It shows that God is still making deposits. When we reconnect to our relevance, which is living out God's story, we can't help but share it. And that, friends, is the greatest deposit we can make. As humans, recognizing our own withdrawal language is really difficult. When churches set out to do it, I first like to recommend that they choose to focus more on adding deposit language. As we continue our time together tomorrow and Tuesday, we will dive deeper into what an impact story is in a congregation and how to identify them and tell them as a way of adding deposits for your congregation. As one of our takeaways, or actionable for this first session together, I'd like to offer each of you a communication evaluation tool to help you look at your bulletins and your newsletters and your website and your social media to determine what % of your current communication is deposit versus withdrawal. Neil will put that up on the screen for you. Thank you, Neil. The world, friends, humans are seeking meaning and relevance. And that is the Spirit working in their lives, sending us and leading them to our congregations to hear about God's greatest deposit. There is relevance and impact in that truth. Thank you.